Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. Joining me as always, Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter. It is Denim Dan, Charlie O'Connor. I dig the Canadian tuxedo today, Charlie.
Gotta love it.
Anyway, so it's Monday here, June 3rd. The Stanley Cup Final is set, Chuck, and it's the week without hockey. It's a little preview of what the off season is going to be like.
Yeah.
Last night we get the clincher, but the series doesn't start till Saturday, June 8th, the final. I'm going away Wednesday night. I don't get back till next Tuesday. I'm going to miss 2 games of the Stanley Cup Final while I'm in London.
They had to have been hoping so hard
for 2 Game 7s
that one of those 2 series went to a Game 7.
Yeah.
And the fact that they both ended in 6, and it was honestly surprising because you had both series were 2-2 going into Game 5. You would assume that one of them goes to a Game 7. The fact that both ended in 6, the NHL had to have just been like, well, shit.
Because last round, it felt like nobody could close a series.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, we got some 3-0s, and it's like somehow we're going to Game 6 on all these. And
yeah.
this series, it's, yeah, man, first closeout game, both teams do it. So we have...
Well, the thing that was real tough this time, and which immediately put them behind the proverbial 8 ball, was the fact that both road teams won Game 5.
Yeah.
So then it became like, oh shit,
going home with
both
a chance
these
to
teams
close.
are going home with a chance to clinch. Like, not that it's impossible to win a road game, a road Game 6 to send it back for Game 7. It's been done so many times, but it's harder because you got the I mean, look, well, we're going to talk about that game last night, the Edmonton Dallas game, but like, Edmonton got outplayed for the vast majority of that game. However, from the jump, because Edmonton got out to a lead, that crowd was nuts. And you can't tell me that crowd didn't give them just a little bit more motivation to sell out to block shots, because they never had the puck the whole game. So
it was 10 shots on goal.
It was all just a bunch of crazy Edmontoners screaming, "We want the cup" at them. And then, of course, they're going to be like selling out to do anything they can do to close out the game.
Edmontonians?
Edmontoners? Edmontonians. Edmontonians sounds better.
Yeah. No, but it's like Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts today was talking about just the atmosphere in Edmonton. He was like, listen, fans of every Canadian team, and I think we can relate to this as Philadelphians, sometimes have a lean towards the negative, some sort of a dark cloud looming somewhat. And last night, he was like talking to fans in Edmonton. He was like, no, everyone here believes they're winning this game. And that's normally not maybe the tone of, yeah, we're back home for Game 6, but the other team might be better, so probably go with 7. No, and that kind of, I think, maybe spurred them on a bit the way you're laying it out.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe a home ice advantage came into play a bit, and maybe not their like level of play, but their commitment to playing and winning the game.
Exactly. Yeah. The only way they were going to win a game where they played that poorly was if they were doing every other thing really well. And they did. Props to them. I think back, as you mentioned about how Elliot was talking to Edmonton people before the game, and to a man or woman or whatever, we're all saying we're going to win this one. You know what that kind of reminds me a little bit of? It reminds me a little bit of the Saturday before the Eagles-Patriots Super Bowl, where I remember I went out to a bar, wrote an article about it for The Athletic when I was there, and Philadelphia very much leaned towards the pessimistic, absolutely. And for whatever reason, I think the vast majority of fans of Philly were like, nah, this is our time. Like, this is happening.
It's the week before, the week in between was the Royal Rumble, and everything was in Philly. All the pre-show, NXT,
of course
everything.
You remember that.
But the whole place is chanting, fuck Tom Brady. The whole, like, no one had an ounce of, like, deference for the, greatest dynasty of our time. They were like, nope. Yeah, I don't know why, but we're just winning this one. Just just the way it's going to be. And I think maybe a little bit of that in Edmonton right now. So we're going to get into a little bit of that. But this schedule, we were saying a little bit before the show, I completely, especially considering what the matchup is. Mm-hmm. It's two teams on basically opposite coasts, the northernmost team in the NHL and the southernmost team in the NHL. It's the longest travel series of all time. I get the travel days built in between. Like, that makes sense. This weekend, this is, come on. Let's get some hockey played a little bit.
Yeah,
here.
I wonder if did they mention, because I would assume it would have been longer if it was Florida Vancouver. Vancouver is further than Edmonton from Florida, right? I mean, it's not as far north, but it's definitely significantly further west.
It's further west.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. I'm not a geographer.
I know Edmonton's north of Calgary because I've done that flight. It's just you basically just fly over nothing. It's just farmland for like an hour. And you don't the flight I was on, it wasn't even that high up. Like, you never even went into the clouds. Like, you just look down and you just see endless amounts of farmland, and then
basically just a helicopter.
Like, I won't even call it a highway. It's just a road that just goes dead north to connect the two cities.
You remember
it's wild.
The South Park in Canada, follow the only road.
There's some truth to
follow the only road. I just wish we could get a little bit of hockey, but there's no hockey until Saturday. So we're going to talk about some dumb stuff that's being talked about around the league.
Okay.
The first of which, so Charlie, since 2015, we have had the Florida Panthers now reach the Stanley Cup Final back-to-back years. Mm-hmm. We've had Tampa Bay reach it 4 times. We've had Vegas go twice. We've seen Dallas. We've seen Nashville. What do all these teams have in common, Charlie? They're in states without state income tax. Like 9 of the last 20 finalists or something are from states without state income tax. Does the league have a salary cap / state tax issue?
I don't think so. Look, I'm not saying that there isn't some type of benefit. It's a cap league. Maybe you can get guys for a little bit cheaper. But I really don't think. I think it's a bit overblown. Because to me, like the reason why Florida is this good is not because they don't have a state income tax. The reason why Florida is this good is because Zito is a great GM. That's the reason. He's dug up guys like Forsling and Verhaeghe. He's made great trades like the one for Tkachuk. You know, they drafted well. That is the reason. It's not because, oh my God, they have such an advantage. Like, is it an advantage? Yeah, but like, is it an advantage that the Rangers are in New York and got Adam Fox and Artemi Panarin because they both just wanted to play in New York City? That's an advantage too, and their taxes are enormous. So yes, it's probably a little bit of an advantage, but there are other teams that have low state income tax or no state income tax that stink because they're not run well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, that's a point I've heard a lot of people make is like, Florida, it's not like this is a new thing for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, they've been bad for a long time.
They've been playing in Florida since their inception. And this is their second trip to the final. The first one was in '96 when they just like trapped their way.
Third now.
Third. Oh, right. Yeah, last year. Yeah. This is their second window in their 20, 30-year history.
Yeah.
And it's because they're really good, not because of this advantage. I will say it is funny, though. We do get the breaking of one of those rules this year. Someone with a player making over $10 million is going to win the cup.
How terrible.
Now, granted, Edmonton has 2 of them, and they're fucking amazing.
Yeah,
it's like the best player in the sport and like another top 5 forward.
Yeah.
Florida, and I think this is maybe where that advantage comes in a little bit. It's Sergei Bobrovsky. Now, no one is saying Sergei Bobrovsky isn't good. Is he a $10 million a year goaltender? Maybe not. But since they have maybe that little built-in advantage, it's like, well, we can save money. We can save a little bit of money elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't know how much money they're really saving. Like, I guess, I don't know. I look at their cap situation.
The Forsling contract is the one everyone points to.
Yeah, but like, is that because of the income tax, or is that because
they got real lucky?
They got real lucky, and also, like, one thing you got to understand about contract negotiations is that number one, points are what gets guys paid. Defensemen and forwards. Obviously forwards, but defensemen too. Also, Forsling doesn't have the same kind of pedigree that other guys do. And like the fact that he did kind of come out of nowhere, that does lower his ask. It does, because there's just a little bit more risk there. He doesn't have the career numbers that a guy who's his age and is that good right now normally has. Because guys that are that good at his age normally have been playing in the league since they were 19. This guy was in Chicago's system, ends up with Carolina, gets waived, and then the last 3-4 years has turned into a stud. Like, that is, in my mind, what's deflating his cap hit, more so than, well, I gave them a $250,000 a year discount because it's Florida and I'm not paying state income tax. Like, I think that was bigger with the Forsling thing than some type of regional benefit. And like, is Barkov, like Barkov's a $10 million player. Now, is that a good cap hit for him? Yeah, I think he's worth more than $10 million in terms of on ice value. But I don't think that like he got $10 million, just $10 million because he's in Florida. He got just $10 million because he's not a guy who's going to score 120 points a year. Like, those are the guys that you can get bargains off of because they're not racking up insane points. They're producing value in other ways. So I'm not saying it's not real. I'm just saying that it's a little fatalistic to be like, well, if you're not in a place with no state income tax, you're not going to win cups. Like that's too much for me.
And that's, I think, like Florida Panthers, they just set, and good for them, like they just set a team attendance record, all that stuff. But I do think, like you mentioned, other teams have built-in advantages. Like you mentioned the Rangers. Who doesn't want to play in New York?
Right.
People, like, guess what you're not getting? Local commercials in Florida. Like, oh, yeah,
sure.
Gary's Swamp used cars. Like, what are they paying? Like, as opposed to, and I realize that's offensive to people in Florida. I don't care. Like, you live in New York. Like, yeah, cost of living, tax is higher. Also, your potential earning elsewhere is considerably higher. And a team like the Flyers, while maybe they're not New York and they're not in a no income tax state, they do have the ability to just make their organization as attractive as possible because they're owned by a corporation that literally can never run out of money.
Yeah.
Like Comcast has infinite money. It's never, ever going to run out. They can spend whatever they want on the Philadelphia Flyers outside of the actual salary cap.
Yeah, however much they want. Now, obviously, they have internal budgets and whatnot. But one thing,
if they chose to, they could spend $1 trillion.
That I do find interesting about this Cup final, because you mentioned Sergei Bobrovsky. And like, look, I'm not going to say that Bobrovsky hasn't been great in this playoff, because he has, and that's been a big part of it. But I do think that guys like Bobrovsky and guys like Darnell Nurse, they show you that like you can have concerning contracts and still win. Now, Nurse has been bad in these playoffs for the most part. Bobrovsky, for the most part, has been very good. But there were long periods of time where that Bobrovsky contract looked freaking terrible.
Yeah. No, from regardless of how they play, and like Darnell Nurse in his own zone, he's blocking, he's making some big blocks. He's like you said, you get paid to produce points. Like that's where the money comes from. And he may not be doing that.
Yeah, but his plus minus has been awful.
Yeah, his plus minus is awful. Like he might be making plays elsewhere, but you can, from a roster construction standpoint, those are not good contracts.
No,
doesn't matter how they're playing in these playoffs.
Yeah.
They're not worth those contracts. Yeah. But when we get into the, as we have for the last few days, the Travis Konechny issue, it's like, do I really want to pay him this? Is he worth this? You and I are both kind of, well, if I had my way, I'd probably trade him. You know, get what you can, get everything you can for him and not give him that contract. However, does not seem as if that's the Flyers' point of view.
Yeah.
And if they are to give him this contract, it might not be, oh, well, it's over.
Yeah.
Rebuild failed. Yeah. Like that, it's completely possible to recover from a single bad contract.
And that was the same thing with Dallas. Had Dallas won this series, Tyler Seguin has a $9.85 million cap hit. Jamie Benn has a $9.5 million cap hit. They're both still good players. We talked about it on last week's show that if they hit the market, it's not like they would be JVR'd where they get a 1 year, $1 million contract. They probably get like somewhere in like the 5 to 7 range over a few years, but they're not delivering surplus value. They're delivering negative value. They are not near $10 million players anymore. It doesn't matter because the team was well built in other areas. So look, teams should always be trying to fine contract with surplus value. They should always be trying to squeeze the most talent as possible into their teams. But it does show you that one contract that is concerning is not going to kill you. Like, I even think back to the Blues, the one team that did it without superstars, and they had the Jay Bouwmeester contract. That contract stunk. It didn't matter. They won anyway because they had tons of value everywhere else and everybody was playing at a high level. Like, I think this is the frustration point I do get a lot of times. It's just that I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all approach to building a contender. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And ideally, you have no bad contracts. But just because you have one or two, that doesn't mean it's like, throw up your hands and like, well, we can't win, blow it up. Like, that's not the way it works. You don't have to. You can work around it.
So what Charlie is saying is maybe when it comes to the salary cap and issues of player contracts, we could all maybe just choose to chill. You know, this team, this league, they drive us absolutely nuts. We've been doing this a long time, Charlie, and we're not getting any less fired up about talking about them, and neither are our fans. And that's why sometimes me personally, I need to choose to chill, and there's no better way to celebrate making that decision to go, you know what, I'm not going to let this bother me. I'm just going to choose to chill. Celebrate that decision with an ice-cold Coors Light. So whether you're freaking out about the salary cap, state income tax, contracts, whatever it is, you need to find the Blue Mountains in your fridge and enjoy a beer as cold as the Rockies, because when everything surrounding your favorite hockey team is on fire, sometimes you just got to chill. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY hockey. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And it's funny, just talking about this, I was listening again to 32 Thoughts today, different topic, but somewhat related. And Friedman's talking about the entire Oilers team when people were really criticizing Darnell Nurse. And there was a day, last week during this Western Conference Final, where both the front page of TSN and Sportsnet were like, Darnell Nurse sucks articles, basically. Yeah. And like the entire team took it personal, and they think when you start to talk about salary and cap hit, that should be out of bounds because any player in the league would have signed that contract, not their fault.
Of course.
Sure. I mean, you don't have to sign it. No one's putting a gun to your head. But they take that personal, like it's their money, blah, blah, blah. And this is where we talked about this a few weeks ago. There is a tangible and intangible benefit to the salary cap in my mind. One, the tangible, like
to the ownership.
To the owners.
Yes.
The tangible, cost certainty, as Gary Bettman calls it. It's gonna suppress player salaries, all that. The intangible, the fans are on the side of the owner because a player getting as much as he can, which is the point of work. Like, it's why no one goes to work and is like, I want to make a little less. Like, the whole point of work is to make as much as you can.
Right.
That puts you opposite the fans.
It doesn't put you just opposite the owners, who they all suck anyway.
Yeah.
Because they're rich assholes.
The fans.
It puts you opposite the fans because the fans want to win, want the team to win. And they've invested their lives in this. And because you took more money, it makes it less likely that the fans will be happy.
We can't get another great player, which is what everyone needs, is another great player. It just, the salary cap just drives me nuts. And the NHL salary cap, where there's just absolutely no leeway except for, oh, yeah, well, Chris Pronger is never going to play again. So, like, he's retired, but not really. So you get to spend his money. Like, that's, okay, cool. But
the LTIR,
like, I'm getting no benefit.
That's the only way.
Like, LTIR is the only loophole in the end, of course, playoffs where there is no salary cap. Right. But you have to have a guy on LTIR for that to work. Mm-hmm. You know? It just, this league salary cap drives me absolutely freaking insane. And this is one of the reasons, because we have to root for, like I just talked last week, 2 days. When's Danny Briere going to win one of these negotiations? And it's like, you know what? Nick Seeler fought Nick Delorier to make his place in this league. He deserves the fucking money. But I can't think of it that way because I'm like, no, the Flyers need a 1C and a 1D. What are we doing here? You know?
I do think that even without the salary cap, it would exist to a degree. Because people, working class people would look at it and say, man, like, I would kill to make that much money, and this guy's not pulling his weight. He's not doing well. Like, they would just look at it as, like, Darnell Nurse is making $9 million, and he plays that crappy. Like, screw that dude. And they'll hold him to a higher standard than they might hold a guy who's making $2 million a year. But the salary cap absolutely does amplify it. It makes it less about, like, thinly veiled jealousy and more about you are actively making my fan experience worse by taking more money.
And it's like, okay, this guy sucks. I hate him. We need to get rid of him. Versus like, you know, I don't really care how much Taijuan Walker's making. Turnbull's better. Put him in the rotation.
Right.
You know, like maybe we can go to a 6-man, figure something out. Like, Nick Castellanos, he needs to hit a little more. You know, for that kind of money, yes, that exists. But there's not like we need to run this guy out of town somehow. You know,
like we need to find a way out of this contract.
Exactly. We need to figure a way out of it. Can he fake an injury so we can LTI? You know,
right.
And it's like, in baseball, I don't know, go buy someone else, dude.
Yeah, because I do the one part of Friedman's point that I do disagree with a bit, because I understand the player's perspective in that, you know, like that's out of bounds, that's going too far to totally rip this guy largely because of his cap hit. I get it, and that's a very player perspective that I understand.
He's providing the player perspective.
Yes. However, I do think it's fair to say that while every player in the league would have signed that contract, signing a contract that large does naturally come with bigger expectations.
Yes.
And, like you are signing up for the additional scrutiny that comes with making that much money. Again, if you're a $1 million a year player and you have a turnover that leads to a loss, fans are going to be ticked off. They're going to be annoyed. They just spent, 3 hours of their life watching a game that ended in an overtime loss. But they're going to be more angry if it comes from a guy who's making $10 million a year, because it's like, well, shit, what the hell are we paying you for? So while I don't disagree with the player's perspective, I do think that making more money should come with more scrutiny, and that really should be the case across the entirety of the world.
No, listen, if suddenly nobody watched this show anymore and I was like, I want to raise, the bosses would be like, no, you clearly aren't worth the money we're already paying you. Like, and that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think hockey players and baseball players have this one thing in common. If they were to play in a Field of Dreams scenario with no one there and they're just in the middle of a fucking cornfield, they would love it.
So, yeah, Ron Hextall. That would have been Ron Hextall's dream way to manage the Flyers. No one is there except for him and the players.
Like, we're just playing hockey. What do you mean we got to do an interview? Like, well, where do you think the money comes from? But no one ever thinks that hard about it. All right, but just looking real quick now at Edmonton and Florida, Charlie. Who we got? I went back and I listened to one of our first episodes of PHLY when we did predictions. Mm-hmm. I picked Edmonton to win it all.
Did you?
Even though in my bracket, I picked Carolina over Edmonton in like October 5th or something. I picked Edmonton over Carolina. So I at least got the Western Conference Final right. And
well, you went with the rematch of the first final coming out of the lost season.
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Except this time Edmonton comes out on top.
That's wild.
Was it Rolison doesn't like blow out his knee in game one?
He got hurt right away.
Yeah.
That Edmonton team was cool, man. With Pronger and Jason Smith. Yeah. Like I felt like they were an aptly named team. Like the Oilers, like they looked like they belonged on a fucking oil rig. Like that's what that team looked like.
Fair.
So Edmonton, Florida, who you got?
Well, are you sticking with Edmonton?
I guess so. I mean, like, I believe Florida is better.
I think Florida's the better team.
I thought Dallas was considerably better, and all of a sudden,
and I still think Dallas is a better team.
Oh yeah,
Edmonton had the two best players, and this is a pet peeve of mine that has come up on Twitter, and I've railed against it. While it is undeniably true that the Oilers had absolutely the best player in the series, probably the best two players in the series, that does not mean that Dallas's stars are not stars. Like I got into a debate with someone last night who's like, well, Dallas doesn't have a superstar. It's like they have one of the 5 best defensemen in hockey and a 24-year-old who has a 109-point season to his credit. If those aren't superstars, then the only superstars are McDavid and McKinnon.
That's it.
That's
There's
it.
only those
They're the only two.
Like Nikita Kucherov doesn't even count.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I just
like Dallas is not a depth team. Dallas is a team with stars that are just as good as the stars that led the Kings to 2 cups and the Blackhawks to 3 cups. Like, they're on that level. No, Jason Robertson and Mira Heiskanen are not generational Ovechkin Crosby types, but they are stars. They are superstars. It's just that the Oilers superstars are, well, McDavid absolutely is, and Draisaitl is on that next tier down. They are unreal, and they played unreal. Also, the low-key reason why Edmonton won that series is because their penalty kill just went into God mode. Like, they can't allow power play goals anymore, apparently. Like, they're just not allowed to.
It seems like defensively, like, obviously Kris Knoblauch, head coach, he's going to get, and geez, every coach in the league is like, oh, so we're going to get another midseason replacement who wins a cup. Cool. Like, everyone's on the hot seat. That means at all times. But Paul Coffey's getting a ton of credit as well for coaching up the defenseman the way he has. So they did it. So, like, Edmonton, for all their flaws, it's like, yeah, man, look what they've done since they hired Knoblauch. It's kind of crazy the way they've changed their game to suit maybe a little bit more of the playoff style, but at the end of the day, it's like, look at the 2 leading scorers in the playoffs. Yeah, they have those guys.
They're racking up tons of points. And look, McDavid has not won a cup yet. Maybe he'll win a cup this time. Maybe he won't. But if you have a really good player for 10, 15 years, chances are there's going to be one playoff run where he's just like, fuck it, we ain't losing. Like, it took a long time for Ovi to do it, but ultimately he did it. Like, you take all those chances and all those shots, and you're in the playoffs every year, and you're always one of the top 5 or 6 teams, you're going to do it at some point. And maybe this is the time when McDavid does it. If you're going with Edmonton, I'm going to go with Florida, because I do think Florida is the better team. I think they are the deeper team. I think they have played better in the playoffs than Edmonton has. I think Edmonton's ceiling is higher. When they are playing their absolute best and when McDavid is in God mode, you just can't beat them. But they've also had like 2-3 game stretches where they look like shit, and like long stretches of games where they just play poorly. And Florida really hasn't. I can't remember a stretch in this playoff run where Florida has looked bad. Like, their worst is like, well, they're just looking okay right now. And then they kick it into another gear and like make Tampa look like Washington.
There was like the 2 days of the Boston series was like, oh, is Boston gonna? No, they're not. Yeah. And that was really, like, Florida has, and they have the experience. Obviously, they won the East last year. They have dudes who've done it before. This is a very interesting series to me. It's like a team of a depth team versus fucking superstars.
But again, Florida, I'm going to have to go through this whole other debate. Like, again, the idea that, like, when I say Florida has great depth, I mean they have great depth, and they also have, like, Matthew Tkachuk is a superstar. Alexander Barkov is probably also an all-around superstar. Their defense is loaded. Like, this is not a team that, like, I don't want people to get into the mindset of, if you don't have a McDavid, you don't have a superstar. It's the same mindset of Flyers fans when they decided that Claude Giroux isn't a star. Like, no, he's a fucking star. Like, Claude Giroux in his prime was one of probably the top 10 best players in hockey. But it was like, well, he's not good enough. Why? Well, because I don't feel like he's good enough.
Yeah.
I just don't get the vibes that he's good enough. Like, no, you're just mad that the Flyers haven't won a cup, and you've decided that because they haven't won a cup, their best player must not be a star.
I did a thing years ago, I can't even remember, where I like assigned a numerical value to each round of the playoffs and looked at players who were finalists for the Selke, Norris, and Hart. And the team, I believe, that gets the furthest on average is the team with the Selke finalists. Okay. And like Barkov he's like new Marchand now. He's just going to win it by default unless someone else has a crazy year.
Probably.
Like, that's pretty much what he is.
It seems like he's going to settle into that as long as he keeps playing this well.
Yeah, as long as he maintains this level. Yeah. And even then, it takes the league like 2 years to catch the league's voters like 2 years to catch up.
You're not wrong.
So he'll be like retired.
He'll be in the mix at least.
Yeah. Be like when Mike Schmidt retired and still made the All-Star team. Like, really? You voted for him? He's not around anymore. But this gets us to something I wanted to ask you, Charlie. The touching of the trophies.
Okay.
I want to know what you think because it's so dumb. And I honestly, Jeff Marek made a great point about it on Twitter. The teams that avoid the trophy have no problem putting the hat on.
Put the hats on.
They put the hat on. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah.
I think the whole who actually cares if they touch the trophy? They don't. Like in the real world, it doesn't matter. We know this. There's no curse. That's nonsense. But
don't tell some fans that.
But I think it's a fun thing. Like it's just a fun thing in hockey. Like will they or won't they touch the trophy? Where are you with the?
Well, Mike Richards touched the trophy,
the Wales
and obviously the Flyers lost.
And
that was the
Lindros
reason.
touched it, right?
I don't remember that.
I think that was a thing.
I know Richards did, and Richards' answer was basically like, "Fuck it, I don't care." Which, like, respect, bud. Like, love that.
His answer for a lot of things,
basically. But I think my general view, and I've said this on the show multiple times, is that jinxes aren't real. It's all bullshit. Like the universe is random and chaotic. It doesn't care that you didn't or did touch a trophy. If I was a player, I would not touch the trophy because I would not feel like dealing with all the bullshit that would result from me touching the trophy. Like it's more about my personal sanity than it is about me actually believing there's a curse.
Well, no, that's because then, like, if you're the captain of the team that loses in the final after you touch the trophy, like it's on you. Like now it's like, well, he's a bad captain because he celebrated. And I think we should all celebrate more. Like you should always celebrate great accomplishments. Like in baseball, oh my God, it was a 3-game series. You're really celebrating a wild card. Like, yes, it is a long fucking season. How many times in life do you get to spray champagne and beer on all your friends? Like celebrate, have a great time. But in hockey, it's like, you think your job's done? You touched the trophy? How dare you? Like, it is an affront to all that is the sport. It's just, it drives me. I would want to be like Mike Richards. Be like, nah, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I don't care.
I don't care.
I don't care.
But maybe you do care about your health, and then you want to maybe not drink. I don't know. It's Olipop.
It's Olipop.
I got nothing for you. Olipop is the world's first functional soda with a classic soda taste and the benefits of plant-based fiber, prebiotics, and other botanical ingredients to support gut health. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar and 9 grams of fiber per can. 2 out of 3 Americans say they suffer from digestive issues, and 95% of Americans don't get the daily recommended amount of fiber. Olipop is tackling both these issues with a drink that tastes just like soda. Prebiotic fiber is the food source for the beneficial probiotic bacteria in your gut, and Olipop has 9 grams of prebiotic fiber in every can that can help support your digestive health. And Olipop is not only available online, but 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at all Wawa stores. I've been telling you about the 2 flavors at Wawa. It's the strawberry vanilla and the root beer. It might be the only root beer I've ever liked in my life. And the strawberry vanilla, listen, Olipop, health benefits, hooray. Mix that strawberry vanilla with a little bit of tequila. I bet you enjoy yourself. And now, exclusively for our listeners, you can get 20% off your next order of Olipop at drinkolipop.com. Just use the promo code PHLY20. It's PHLY20 to get that 20% off. Discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscriptions. Olipop is also sold online at Amazon and in 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and GoPuff. Me personally, I'd go to drinkolipop.com. Use that promo code PHLY20.
And I'm just saying, Olipop hasn't gotten sued in a class action lawsuit over the last couple of weeks.
You know, that was a thing.
There's that positive.
Someone did send that to me on Twitter. I was like, oh, look at that. Yeah. How about you, Olipop? Way to go.
Good job actually providing benefits, health benefits, unlike your competition.
So, Charlie, we've basically alluded to this tweet that you sent like 3 different times today, but now I actually want to show it. Your issue with Edmonton making it to the Stanley Cup Final. You tweeted, "Oh God, the exhausting part of Flyers Twitter discourse due to this Cup Final is going to be that the Oilers' success proves that the Flyers will never win anything without a generational player, isn't it? Neglecting the fact that, obviously, McDavid yet to win anything, and you're picking Florida. I think I haven't looked at the odds yet, but I would guess Florida's the favorite.
I got an email saying that, and this is just one of the bet books.
They all use the same.
That Florida is about a 56% favorite. So close, but they are favored at this point.
It's hockey. Anything over 54% is like,
right.
Yeah, that's crazy talk.
Right.
But they do have, I would say Florida has better blue line, better goaltending. All around they're the better team.
Better forward depth.
Yeah, like better depth.
Yeah.
But Edmonton just has those two guys that the way we've always talked about goalies, like, you need to steal a game in every series. You need to steal one whole series. It's like, man, Draisaitl and McDavid, they're going to be consistent. Like, they're going to just put up points because that's what they do. They're points machines.
Yeah, of course.
But they can just go nuclear, like once or twice, and that kind of ruins your series. Like, Florida could outplay them for 6-7 games. McDavid and Draisaitl just go wild. What are you going to do?
Well, but again, I guess this really goes back to my overarching philosophy about it really influences all of what I say when I'm analyzing things like the playoffs and analyzing things like individual players and whatnot. My view of the playoffs is that you want to put yourself in position every year where you are one of the 5 or 6 best teams. And that is how you position yourself best to win a cup. But once you're one of those 5 or 6 best teams, whether you win the cup on any given year, it's fucking luck.
Yeah.
It's about whether your guys stayed healthy at the right time. It's about whether calls went your way. It's about whether your goalie happened to get hot at the right time. Like, yes, you have to be one of the best teams to be a legitimate cup threat. Both of these teams are. Both Florida and Edmonton, I would comfortably put in the top 5, if not top 3, of best teams in the league. But once you're in that group, it is kind of luck. And that I will always believe that it's not like, oh man, this just, if Edmonton wins the cup, they're the best team this year. Like, no, they won the tournament. And everybody's trying to win the tournament, and that's great. But like, it will not change. Like, the fact that Edmonton beat Dallas in the series, it doesn't make me think that like Edmonton is just like, okay, well, case is over. Edmonton's great and Dallas wasn't, and it's that simple. Like, no, I think they were both great. They played a tight series. The final game of the series, Dallas outshot Edmonton like 36-10 and didn't win because McDavid went into God mode one time, and Stuart Skinner, who a week and a half ago almost got benched
for Cal Pickard, remembered he can play well in goal and stood on his head.
Like,
this was kind of good.
How you win cups is you build a really good team. You build a really good team that can stay a really good team for 6, 7, 8 straight years.
And then
you cross your fingers that the breaks go your way when you play one of the other or 2 of the other really good teams. For Dallas, they played 2 other really good teams, beat them both. They couldn't beat a third. It happens.
Look, that's looking at Dallas's path, what would have been their path to the Stanley Cup Final. Like, you beat the last 2 Stanley Cup champions and top 5 or 6 teams in the league. Everyone would probably agree. Yeah. Vegas and Colorado,
right
they were contenders. I bet you, if you looked at percentage of hold in Vegas, those 2 teams were as close to the top as anybody.
At the start of the playoffs, I absolutely would have said, like, if I'm picking the 6 teams most likely to win the cup, all 3 of Vegas, Colorado, and Dallas would have been in that list. And so would Edmonton have been.
They beat 2 of those teams, and then they ran in to Connor McDavid.
Yeah, who was playing like peak Connor McDavid.
I always say, if you make the conference final, and granted, yes, we talked before the show, like that Montreal team a couple of years ago, no, they were not one of the best teams.
Stunk.
Outliers happen, crazy dumb shit happens. It's hockey, it's basically pinball out there. But I believe if you reach the conference final, you're good enough to win the cup. You're on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're at least on the right path.
You're at least on the right path, to be sure.
And it's just now, these are the teams that made it. The way we do tournament, the way we determine champions here in the U.S. especially, like a best of 7 4-round tournament where not everyone plays everyone and there's just different crazy. especially the seeding of the NHL, which is freaking insane, where they're just like, I don't know, you're going to play some division team, and then like, yeah, you have the second best record. Sorry, you're going to play the third best record. Like it's just absolutely wacky. And now we determine the champion, and they're the best. And yeah, the cup is the ultimate goal. That's how we say who the champ is. But I don't know if it's any better of a way than like, hey man, we just played 82 of these things, and this team, like the Rangers had the best record, and like all that. Like, what's the difference?
But like the idea that Edmonton beating Dallas, is proof that you can't do it Dallas's way. You can't do it without a generational guy, because like, and I've gone through this back and forth with people, and I've been like, okay, so then what's your solution? Is your solution that if you're not Edmonton or Colorado, if you don't have, one of McDavid, McCarr, or McKinnon, if you're not one of those two teams, then you should just like that a truly rational NHL would be those two teams playing for the cup every year and everyone else tanking. Like that, because, well, you can't win without a generational player. Like, it's stupid. You can build a really good team a lot of different ways. And it's not like, well, if you don't have Sidney Crosby or Alex Ovechkin, you're fucked. Like, that is such a short-sighted,
lot of not them won the cup.
It's such a short-sighted, limited way to evaluate the way teams should be built. And that was what I was railing against, was this idea of like, well, if Matvei Michkov isn't one of the three best players of his generation, then the Flyers should go back to tanking because, well, that's just not going to get it done. Like, literally last year, a team won that was a fucking expansion team that certainly never tanked. No. They were good literally from the jump.
They went to the final their first year.
Yeah. Like, 2 of the last 5 champions very much were not like the Blues, and you're like, oh, the Blues are an outlier. Why are the teams that don't fit your view like, oh no, they don't count? But all the teams that do, it's like, well, McDavid's never gotten to a cup final before, but this proves you need a generational player to win. No, you just want a generational player. You know why? Because they're super fucking fun. But like, the plan should not be, let's just suck every year until we get one and like just wait. Like, shit, the Sixers did that. They have a generational player.
And I was going to say,
they can't get past the second round.
Like, I do think the Sixers process kind of skewed all of our views of all the sports.
It did.
Because
it absolutely did.
Basketball, especially in the Eastern Conference during the reign of LeBron James, you didn't have a chance. Like, guess who was going to the final every year? Him. So you probably were better off just hoping to wait him out, and maybe you get a generational talent or two along the way. But I think like McDavid now in year 8, finally getting there is proof like you need more. Like, you can be the Stars. You can be the Panthers, who now are going to their second in a row without a generational guy.
Look at Florida. Like, they have
great players.
They have Ekblad and they have Barkov, 2 guys they picked in the top 5. And it took them like 10 years to build a cup contender around them. Like, there is not a one-size-fits-all approach to like, well, you just need top 5 picks and then that's it. Like, there are a lot of different ways you can build a cup contender. And I'm not saying that like tanking doesn't work. If you get a McDavid, if you get a Bedard, if you get a Crosby or Ovechkin, you're friggin' set. But guess what? Those guys aren't in every draft. You're not guaranteed to win the lottery. You're not guaranteed to be bad at the perfect time to get an elite player. There are a lot of different ways to win cups. And I just think that like we shouldn't limit ourselves to thinking that like, well, it has to be done this way. No, you can do it a lot of different ways. You do need a lot of talent. You need a lot of talent. And that always has to be the goal, to get talent, to maximize how much talent you have under your cap by signing guys to good contracts, by drafting well, by trading well, by managing a team well. But it is not as simple as, well, you just need to pick in the top 5 straight years. Like, I've had people with a straight face tell me that, like, well, like, because when people are like, well, the Flyers don't have any top 5 picks, like, well, yeah, but they traded for a guy who was 6th overall and Michkov was 7th overall. Do they just not count? And they will look at me and be like, yes, they don't count. It's like,
well, then Jack Eichel doesn't count.
But like, so it's just the one pick, the 2 picks that they don't fit your model. You're overfitting the model. There are so many different ways to build great teams. But again, this does go back to my original point that I don't view the Stanley Cup winner as the only team that was capable of winning the cup.
Yeah.
Like, I look at it as, like, for example, San Jose. They never won a cup. They got there. They didn't actually get it done. But I think there are 1,000 other alternate universes, parallel universes, where the bounces went their way, and they did. Because you know what? For 8 years, they were a top 5, top 6, top 7 team. The bounces just didn't go their way. And that stinks. And it sucks for their fans, and it sucks for their general manager, and it sucks for their players. But it doesn't mean that, like, their team building philosophy was fatally flawed. It just means they didn't get the breaks.
And I think of, like, when you thought that San Jose team never got one, and we would think of them totally differently. I said this to you before the show. The Bruins, 2010 to present.
Yeah.
If they don't just get the one in 2011, how differently do we think of...
They are viewed as such chokers.
It's the way we do the Sharks.
Because how many times have they not lived up to expectations in the playoffs? But because they got that one cup, we don't think of Bergeron and Marchand as chokers. We think of them as, no doubt about it, Hall of Famers, and everything's good about
winners,
hockey.
Man. Yeah. Fucking winners, even though they just got the one. And think about that year that they get the one. Yes, they swept the Flyers round 2. Their other 3 series went 7. Like, it came down to one game every single time.
Yes.
What if they just... And I get, like, that's the hockey... Listen, yeah, you got them, but you willed your team to win those games. You came up big in those moments. Then why didn't you every single year?
Yeah.
If you are, well, you're just inherently a winner, why didn't you win?
Why didn't you win all the time?
You were together for 14 years.
Yeah.
And you did, like, you just got to get the one. And you're thought of totally differently.
My view is that the goal of every team should be build a team that as a whole is a top 5, top 6, top 7 true talent team. And then cross your fingers like hell that your guys come together.
Stay healthy.
The chemistry's there. The health is there. The bounces are there. You don't run into a team that just happens to have your number.
You don't run into that team.
That team that you just can't beat. Like, you get the right matchups. But, like, there are a lot of teams that were good enough to win cups that don't have every single top 5 pick in the world. They just did it. And I don't think that means that their team building philosophy was inherently flawed. It just means that they didn't get the breaks. I know that puts me at odds with the way most people think about this, because the way most people think about it is, well, if they won a cup, that validates everything they did, that everything they did was smart, and everything everyone else did was not as smart because they won. And my view is that if we picked champions the way that the Premier League did, where it's the team that has the best record at the end of a 38-game season or however many games they play, then I would agree with you. But we pick champions based on a fucking crapshoot of a tournament. And I don't think we should be making concrete evaluations on what works and what doesn't by whether a team happened to get the breaks in a short sample size playoff series. It's fun. I love the playoffs. They're a blast. But it's not that simple if you're evaluating what works and what doesn't. You have to build really good teams that are really good teams for a while, and then you hope like hell you get the breaks. That's my view, and it always will be.
I always know it's going to be a good show when I can get Charlie fired up before we start. And it's carried over into the show. Before we go any further, I got to tell you about the #1 casino experience in Pennsylvania. That's right. It's Bet Parks Casino in Ben Salem. Charlie is talking about, stacking talent, just having some absolutely amazing talent. If you want to see some great talent, you got to get the Bet Parks in Ben Salem this summer. You can see the Marshall Tucker Band. You can see Australian Pink Floyd. This one, Snooki and Joey coming to Parks Casino June 28th for their live Jersey Shore podcast. The It's Happening podcast, you got to check that out. Michael Blaustein, the comedian, on October 25th. Joe Conklin's comedy night every Thursday. So much great stuff going on at Bet Parks Casino over the next couple months. You have to check it out. And of course, like I said, #1 casino experience in Pennsylvania. Parks Casino has 3,200 state-of-the-art slots, 115 live table games, and a beautiful poker room. There's a state-of-the-art sports book with a 150-foot video wall, plus the ultra cool X Lounge, dining options. I could sit here all day. This would be a 10-minute read if I told you about how much great food there is at Bet Parks. You got to check it out for yourself in Ben Salem. Sushi, steakhouse, Liberty Bell Gastropub, beer garden, just so much great stuff. So visit parkscasino.com. That's Parks Casino. This is how you win. Must be 21. Gambling problem. Call 1-800 Gambler. All right, Charlie. So this gets us to the, I guess, the Flyers portion of the show.
I mean, we've been talking about the Flyers.
It's always part of it.
Yeah, it's always how does this affect the Flyers?
We've talked about like what maybe we shouldn't be hyper focused on. What can the Flyers take away from these two teams that have now reached the Stanley Cup Final? Like, to me, when you talked about, I think last week, the hyper aggressiveness of Bill Zito.
Yes.
Like, man, you can make mistakes, but the best way to remedy mistakes is be like, well, how can I fix this? And how can I fix it now? Like that Jonathan Huberdeau contract. You know what we can do? Fucking get Matt Tkachuk. Like, we can keep rolling over these issues. I'm very interested to see what you have to say about what the Flyers can take away. For me, it's aggression.
I would agree with that. I think Florida is the more interesting case study, because to me, the big takeaway that you can gather from the Oilers is, I mean, it's an important one. Just keep trying.
Yeah.
That you've got your guys and they're real good. Don't listen to the outside noise that says, well, maybe you can't win with two really good players. Maybe you need to trade Draisaitl for something else. Like,
for two guys who aren't as good as him.
Don't listen to those people. You have your really good players. Stick with them, and eventually you will be rewarded. That you don't need to listen to the people, the idiots, the idiot columnists who are saying, well, McDavid isn't playoff material. He doesn't play well enough on defense. You'll never win a cup with him. Ignore those idiots.
One of 6 guys with 2 30-point postseasons already.
Yes. Ignore those idiots and trust that your high-end superstars will ultimately get you to where you want to go. So I think that is it's a very easy lesson to learn. The Flyers are not at a point where they have to worry about that. No. But hey, if Matvei Michkov is awesome, but he's 25 years old and the Flyers haven't gotten past the second round yet, that will be a lesson to take. Where if Michkov every year is scoring 100 points, but you have people in this market saying you'll never win with him. He's small. He's a winger. He doesn't play defense. You got to trade him. Ignore those idiots and keep sticking with the really, really good player who scores 100 points every year. Eventually, you will be rewarded. That, to me, is the primary takeaway from the Oilers. The Panthers are a lot more interesting because you're right. They are a very aggressive team. And I think the takeaway there is never stop trying to improve. That never stop trying to dig up a Gustav Forsling, a Carter Verhaeghe. Never stop giving those guys opportunities. Keep cycling through the bottom of your lineup to find better players. Don't be satisfied. You have Jonathan Huberdeau. Jonathan Huberdeau is a great player. He scores a lot of points. He's real good for you. You have the opportunity to get a better player. You don't say, well, we drafted Hubie and we know him and he's a great guy. You say, you know what? Sorry, Jonathan. We love you. You've been great for us, but Matthew Tkachuk's better. Sorry. Goodbye. You got to be a little bit heartless to build the kind of team that Florida has. And I think that's a good takeaway.
And it's just in terms of what Florida has done over the last few years, I find so interesting. This is the first time in Stanley Cup Final history the top 4 guys of any draft are going to be playing in the final.
It's really cool.
And 3 of them are on Florida. Ekblad, number 1 in 2014. Reinhart goes to Buffalo at number 2. Florida acquired him for a 2022 first rounder, and Devin Levi. Draisaitl went 3 to Edmonton, and Sam Bennett went number 4. Florida acquired him for a 2022
but I think
second-round pick.
I think Reinhart and Bennett are probably the 2 best examples of this, take big swings and bet on talent. Reinhart was real good in Buffalo. Yeah. Now he's better now because he's not in a fucking dumpster fire of a team like Buffalo, but he was a really good player there. I remember that summer, I wanted the Flyers to trade for Reinhart instead of Ristolainen. It was why not just take the package that you were offering for Risto and offer it for Reinhart, who's actually good? Instead, they trade for Ristolainen, and we all saw what happened. But Reinhart was a guy where it's okay, he's available, and you have a chance to get him. And look, it's not like they didn't give up things for him. They gave him a first-round pick. but it didn't set them back. Like, we're not talking about 3 firsts. They had the chance to get a guy who was already very good and had the potential to be star level good, and they got him. Bennett is even more interesting because he was a legitimate buy low. This was a guy who was not playing that well in Calgary, and the people I talked to around the league, like, they were skeptical of that trade. It was like, I don't think there's much more there in Sam Bennett, that, you know, he's just not the guy we thought he was going into that draft. Now, sure looks like he's the guy we thought he was, except maybe what he needed was to be in a place where he didn't have to be the guy, where he could be the Konechny. He could be what we would love Konechny to be on a great team. He can just be the really good second tier, not the guy that all of our franchise hopes and dreams are being pinned upon.
Does it strike you how similar Sam Bennett looks to Claude Giroux, just off topic?
Oh, just like look-wise?
They look oddly similar. Like, if Claude Giroux was a Dick Tracy villain, he would be Sam Bennett. Like, he got hit in the head with something. Like, that's what he does. I don't know. It's wild to me.
But no, Florida has been very opportunistic in terms of jumping on instances where really talented guys become available. And look, if Danny and the Flyers are going to continue to hold to this, we are not going to bottom out to get top picks, they are going to need to jump on opportunities like, you know, Sam Reiner being available, Sam Bennett being available. They're going to have to, because that's how you make up for the fact that you don't have top 5 picks. Again, I'm not saying that having top 5 picks doesn't help. It does. Me and you both are on record as saying that, like, we would rather them be trying to bottom out rather than having John Tortorella keep this team 10 picks above where they probably would be otherwise. But you can build a team another way. And it's funny. I'm actually going to read this tweet that I got today, because let me find it real quick, because it very much spoke to something I said last week. And I don't know if this person watches our show or if this was completely independent and this is just something they thought of on their own. But I was having this conversation about the merits of tanking. And this was the answer. It was like, is it possible to get great talent without drafting high? Yes. But it requires a combination of luck and skill the Flyers have given us no reason to suggest they have. It requires a lot less skill at the top of the draft. And I do think, this is something I said last week, I do think that is what is driving a lot of the online Flyers fan belief that tanking is the only way to go. I think if you hooked most of them up to a lie detector, they would acknowledge that, yes, there are other ways to build a contender. They have just lost faith that the Flyers can do that because they think the Flyers are uniquely incompetent and will never not be incompetent. And their view is that if they think the Flyers are just incompetent and always will be, they're like, well, at least with tanking, they could actually luck into overcoming their own incompetence. I am not ready to say that this new organization is incompetent. They might be. I'm not just ready to say it. I'm just not ready to say it yet. And that's where I'm different from the hardcore tankers in the fan base.
And it is the one thing we've never tried. And a lot of people just want different for different sake, because if you're about our age, it's been a lot of the same.
Yeah.
And it's trending down, you know? Like,
well, I mean, now it's trending.
Now it's trending. I just mean, like, from where we were 10 years ago, like, it's gotten even worse. And it's the one thing we've never tried.
Yeah, they might be up a little bit, but they're still down from where they were in 2009.
Yeah. All right. Before we get out of here, I just got to tell, we have some super chats, actually. I want to get to the super chats and then this read, and then we're going.
Dorsal, I'm just hyped for the draft party. I don't care about what happens now. It's just fun as hell. The draft party. We are having the draft party. Obviously, we've partnered up with Broad Street Hockey, our former employers. Kelly obviously is she runs Broad Street Hockey now, and she is obviously a regular contributor to PHLY. But we're super excited for that. There will be more details, but the draft party is happening, so set your calendars. I personally will not be there because I will be at the draft at Sphere in Vegas. But Bill will be. So, and obviously Kelly will be as well. We're
going to have a lot of people there. It's going to be a great time. But before that, at the end of June, we have some Phillies events coming up, 8th and 9th for the London series against the Mets. It is going to be a great time at Gall & Company Malt House in Port Richmond. It's going to be really, really cool. We're going to have a watch party. pregame show, all sorts of stuff. You can hang out with Renee, hang out with Jamie. It's going to be a great time at Gall & Company. If you can't go to London like me, why not take in the games? Early start times both days, June 8th and 9th, for, to make up for the time difference over in the UK. It's going to be a great time. Yeah, there we are. So it's 9 a.m. This Sunday game. So that's going to be a great time. All right. Make sure you come on out to the Phillies watch parties for June 8th and 9th at Gall & Company in Port Richmond. That will do it for us today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. Never miss a live show. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers. The podcast, PHLY Flyers. That's it. We'll be back tomorrow at 1. My name is Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.